Hello everybody, this is Kaiju Sora's G2K. I'm back, and today I'm going to do a tier list ranking of every single Godzilla movie from 1954's Gojira all the way to 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters. Sorry that I stubborn a little bit right there. But anyways, this is going to be my tier list ranking. I've seen a lot of people also do tier list rankings on Marvel, DC, Star Wars, and even Godzilla. So yeah, this is going to be my ranking of every single Godzilla movie from best to worst. And keep in mind that these are simply my opinions. If you disagree with any of them or all of them, that's completely fine for me as long as your disagreement is civil and all that. So let's get going. So the first movie here is Godzilla the Planet Eater, and right out of the gate, I'm giving that. Wait, what? Oh, okay, there we go. All right, now I see it. Sorry about that. Kind of lagged a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to give it a C tier right there. The Planet Eater is definitely the best of the anime trilogy movies. We actually get a fight between Godzilla and King Ghidorah, unlike the last two films. The characters here are a little bit better, and the movie overall is just a little bit better than the last two, but still very disappointing. Disappointed with how they treated King Ghidorah in this movie. Still disappointed that the fight itself isn't really that much of a fight. And it still commits the same mistake of not giving us very interesting characters. It's still giving us concepts that are treated surface level. The changes they made on Godzilla and King Ghidorah are still very surface level changes. But it is more bearable than the last two movies, so I'll give it that. So next we have Destroy All Monsters, and I know a lot of you are going to hate me for saying this, but putting it in C tier. Oh, sorry. Right there. C tier, right there. Destroy All Monsters I don't hate. I think it's pretty good as a kaiju romp. It's just not one that has aged very well. I've made a video on the unpopular opinions of the Godzilla franchise, 5 of them in fact, and I said that Final Wars is better than Destroy All Monsters. Destroy All Monsters is not a bad movie by any means. It just has not aged very well. It was meant to be the last film of the Showa era, but because it was successful enough, there was more movies after that, for better and for worse. But yeah, Destroy All Monsters as a kaiju romp, where all the monsters of the Showa era at the time got to team up to fight King Ghidorah. That was loads of fun. That was honestly very well done. And technically the movie is not a bad movie. It's pretty well made. It gets to spend more time building up the monster fights, if you know what I mean. And the roster of kaiju is less than Final Wars. And because of that, it's utilized a little bit better. But I just don't feel like the movie succeeded in with everything else, because everything outside of the monster movie, everything else outside of the kaiju stuff in this movie was pretty dull, honestly. So next we have, what is this one? Ghidorah, the three-headed monster, I believe it is, and I'm also putting it in the C tier category. Again, as a monster movie, as a kaiju flick that introduces Ghidorah into the Godzilla franchise, it's not bad. It's an okay introduction, but it doesn't do a lot of things that really makes me want to go back and revisit it. And once again, it's pretty dull on the human side of things. And, it has Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan all teaming up with it. And the movie, in my opinion, does a pretty good job of showing us how threatening, how imposing King Ghidorah is in the first movie that he appears in. Sorry, right there. So I'll give the movie credit for that. But honestly, aside from being an introduction to King Ghidorah, it doesn't really do that much for me. So I'm putting it in C tier. Next, we have GMK. This right here is one of my favorite Godzilla movies. It's my favorite movie of the Millennium Era, and it's my 4th favorite Godzilla movie. Really like that they brought Godzilla back to the roots of him being a bad guy. That they made this Godzilla a more demonic entity and a force to be reckoned with. That he's basically the vessel for all the people that have died during World War II from the Japanese army. So the movie actually plays on that concept extremely well. And the 3 Guardian monsters, Mothra, Ghidorah, and Baragon, were also pretty well done. Overall, the movie was honestly very fun to watch. The destruction scenes, the plot of the movie, the characters, even the characters themselves, I thought were pretty serviceable. GMK, in my opinion, is just a good Godzilla movie, and a pretty good movie overall, so we gotta give it that. And then we have Godzilla's Revenge right here, F tier. Obviously, it's the worst Godzilla movie of all time. It's just stock footage, just really bad acting, and just a really weird timeline of events that the movie, that the story of the film plays with. I'll give the movie credit for exploring one idea, that all of this takes place in the imagination of a kid, and that could have really made for some interesting existential commentary on whether Godzilla exists or not in this movie. That would have actually made very good, but the execution of the movie was overall just really horrible. So what else is there not said? I'm sorry. what else is there that has not been said already about Godzilla's Revenge and just how bad that one was? And yeah, it's likely I'll never see that again. Alright, next is Godzilla 2000, which I'm going to put in the B tier. Godzilla 2000 is the first Toho Godzilla movie that I saw. It's the movie that introduced me to Godzilla, and it's the movie that introduced me to, at the time, which was my favorite Godzilla design. The Millennium Godzilla suit design, in my opinion, is, to this day, still my favorite Godzilla suit design, because I really like the design of Godzilla, and I even made a One Monstrous Moment video, on why the first 10-15 minutes of the movie works, because it reintroduces Godzilla and the franchise back in a way that was the right way. You know, it made up for the 1998 Godzilla movie, which was right here. And overall, as just a Godzilla movie, it was pretty solid for what it was. The characters in this movie, pretty good. The story was simple, you know, straight to the point. It's not too complex. The effects are mostly good, except for the CGI. And you can tell that the movie was heavily rushed into production. But overall, it was solid. You know, I'm gonna put it in the top 10 of my favorite Godzilla movies, but certainly not in the top 5. Alright, next is Godzilla Tokyo Sos, and I'm gonna put this one in B tier, honestly. I like Tokyo SOS, but it's not the best movie of the Millennium Era, you know what I mean? Like, it was good for the final act, you know, when Kiryu, Godzilla, and Mothra all fought in the city. That was a lot of fun to watch. The problem I have with the movie is that structurally it's very uneven. The first act is very long, and the third act is very long, but there's really no second act. And here's what I mean, that the movie just gets to the final battle right away. It doesn't feel like there's a second act in the middle, you know, like the whole third act is just one giant final battle. So structurally and pacing is a little bit uneven, but it's not bad. I still recommend it, and I really liked that they upgraded Kiryu in this movie. And it's also weird that the main character, the main character in the last film, doesn't appear in this movie. Like, she appears for briefly and then is written off to never appear again in the movie. It's kind of weird how they did that, honestly. But yeah, there's Tokyo SOS right there, and it's also the movie that introduced me to Mechagodzilla, so there's that. Here we have Godzilla 1984, or The Return of Godzilla, or Godzilla 1985. And where should I put it? You know, I'm going to put it in B tier as well. It was pretty good, honestly. I'm not, like, someone that grew up with this movie, so I don't have a lot of nostalgia for it. You know, I don't have, like, fond memories of it necessarily, but it was pretty good as the first movie of the Heisei era. I thought it was pretty good. The design of Godzilla I really do not like, and here's where I'm going to kind of piss people off a little bit. I did not like the 1984 Godzilla design. For me, it screams Showa era design. It doesn't scream Heisei design. However, ignoring that and the rest of the movie, I really like it. I really like that it took the basic premise of the 1954 original and it frames it with at the time, the Cold War tensions, you know, in the 1980s. And it treated Godzilla back as the villain with the apocalyptic roots of the original movie, just framed in the current time period that it was set in. So I'll give it that. So moving on, here's Godzilla 1998, and as a Godzilla movie, I'm going to give it a D. You know, we all know that Godzilla 98 is not really a good Godzilla movie, for the obvious reasons, because Godzilla himself barely looks like Godzilla, barely acts like Godzilla. The movie itself is just really not that compelling. However, as a kaiju movie, I think it's pretty good. And I've even made the unpopular opinion video on how I think Godzilla 98 is better than some of the Showa era films, and you're going to see why. You're going to see all the Showa era films I have in the D and F tiers. But yeah, Godzilla 98, I like it as a monster movie of its own. Without the Godzilla brand associated with it, I liked it for what it was. You know, it's not a great movie, it's not great cinema. It's a fun 90s action movie with an original cool monster that, if not viewed as a Godzilla movie, it's pretty good for what it is. But because it's a Godzilla movie, because I have to judge it as a Godzilla movie, I have to put it in the D tier. So yeah. Moving on, here we have Godzilla 2014. I'm going to put it a B tier. 2014 Godzilla is my favorite of the American Godzilla movie adaptations. It's the one that brought back Godzilla and brought back the realism of the character and executed it pretty well. And it set the tone for what the Monsterverse could have been had Gareth Edwards stayed to direct the Godzilla movies after this one. 2014's Godzilla, for me, excelled at being Godzilla without resorting to fan service, you know, without resorting to copying the Toho films that much. It designed Godzilla perfectly while still being its own thing. And it gave us some cool original monsters with the Mutos. And it depicts the scale and the sense of everything with realism. If there's some things I have to say against 2014's Godzilla that does hold it back from being a great movie, is that, of course, Bryan Cranston's character dies very early in the movie. Godzilla is constantly teased throughout the film. And the movie doesn't really focus on Godzilla until the last act of the movie. So those are the things that I have to say that, yeah, unfortunately does hold 2014 Godzilla back from being a truly great film. Alright, next we have... I don't know why it does this. Yeah, bear with me, guys. I don't know why it does this. Okay, there we go. Alright, next is Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, and I'm going to put it in the... I'm also putting it in the B tier, right here. I really liked Godzilla x Mechagodzilla. For me, it's a very underappreciated film in the Godzilla franchise. For me, it's a good monster versus it's a 1 versus 1 fight between Godzilla and Kiro, or Mechagodzilla. And I really liked the Millennium Era Kiro. It's my second favorite version of Mechagodzilla. And I really liked the main character in this movie. I forgot her name, forgot the name of her character, but I really liked the character arc that she has in this movie. And I really liked that her struggles ties in extremely well with the plot of the movie, and it's one of the more captivating human stories in the Godzilla movie, to be honest with you. I might revisit it. I do have the movie on DVD, so I'm going to go back and watch the movie again, because I have forgotten some of it, unfortunately, but the movie, in my opinion, holds up pretty well. The effects are very good. The suitmation, my god, it's incredible with the suitmation. It's better than some of the CGI movies today, I gotta be honest with you. And unlike Godzilla unlike Godzilla Tokyo Sos, where the plot of that movie is structurally uneven and the pacing is a bit weird, here the movie has a proper 3-act structure, and the pacing is a lot better as well. And it flows pretty well as well. It doesn't go by so fast, nor does it take its time, nor does it take too long. The pacing of the movie is just right, despite being a 1 hour and 25-minute long movie. I believe that's how long the movie was. So Godzilla x Mechagodzilla was not bad at all. I liked it for what it was. Next we have Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle, and I'm giving this one a D tier. City on the Edge of Battle has some very interesting ideas, especially with Mechagodzilla. It's a very different approach to Mechagodzilla. Unfortunately, it does not work. Mechagodzilla in this movie is just not used very well at all. They've made this Mechagodzilla to be overly designed and just overly complicated in its design that it doesn't really look like Mechagodzilla. And then they use him as a city, and the city itself is not really that interesting. I appreciate that this movie does try to develop the character of Haruo, where in the first film, Planet of the Monsters, which we're going to get to right after this one, here he does learn from his actions. He does learn from the mistakes he makes, but it's bare bones, if you know what I mean. It's not really deep character development. The movie itself doesn't really have a kaiju fight in it. It's the thing that's disappointing, and it doesn't deliver on the things that you wanted, and it doesn't live up to the potential that it could have. And that's the problem with the anime trilogy that runs with all 3 movies right here, is that they don't live up to the potential, and they make these changes that don't really feel necessary. They didn't need to change that much of the characters, if you know what I mean. So I'm putting that in D tier. Here we have Godzilla Planet of the Monsters, and speaking of that one, also putting in D tier. It's not the worst Godzilla movie, though. I don't think it's the worst one, even though it is in my top 10 worst Godzilla movies. The thing that doesn't work about Planet of the Monsters is that, sure, it establishes a lot of things. It establishes the world building, it establishes the tone, it establishes what we expect to see in the anime trilogy, but it doesn't live up to it, if you know what I mean. The human characters in this movie are shallow, in most of these Godzilla movies, Haruo in this movie is a angsty Eren Yeager type character that just yells that he's gonna destroy Godzilla. That's all he does in this movie, and even in the other 2 anime films right here, that's all he does. Godzilla himself is not really in the movie that much, and when he's in the movie, he's only in it for a few minutes. That twist ending, however, is actually very good though. But the rest of the movie is very underwhelming, very disappointing, and just very dull too. And the color palette of this movie is just really ugly too, very muted and just not very inviting. Whereas the other 2 movies have very vibrant, very gorgeous color palette, if you know what I mean. This movie does not have a very good color palette to it. So next is Shin Godzilla, and Shin Godzilla, I'm going to give it an A tier. Shin Godzilla succeeds as a Godzilla movie. They brought back Godzilla, but in a much more horrifying and much more gruesome way. This depiction of Godzilla, in my opinion, works. Because not only does he represent the disasters of the Fukushima power plant and the earthquake and tsunami that happened, but they treat this Godzilla as if he were a real-life event, as if he actually showed up in the world, that's how Japan would react. And I really like that this movie, Shin Godzilla, they emphasize on Japan as its own character. Every time Godzilla's in the movie, every time he's on Japan, Japan itself is a character. The Japanese government, the Japanese citizens, the main cast of characters that are all politicians, most of them at least are politicians, they all struggle to come up with a plan to stop this Godzilla. And I really like that sense of urgency, that sense of dread, and that sense of real high stakes that is in Shin Godzilla. And this design of Godzilla absolutely works. I know some people don't really like Shin Godzilla for its design, but I really like it. It's a really malformed, very twisted and mangled version of Godzilla that would scare the hell out of you if you were right in front of him. And if there's some things I don't like about Shin Godzilla is that I wish there was more personality to Godzilla. I wish he moved a little bit more. Like I wish Godzilla had I wish they explained a little bit more as to why Godzilla's coming to Japan to attack. Like that may have been intentional to not give Godzilla personality in this film because he is meant to represent a natural disaster, but I would have liked it if they explained more of Godzilla a little bit more. And I would have liked if the human characters actually were well written in this movie, because that would have made it a truly great film in my opinion. So next we have Godzilla vs. Destroyer, and I'm going to give it an A tier. Godzilla vs. Destroyer, in my opinion, was a great ending to the Heisei era. It was emotionally potent and also very good at high stakes as well, because this movie shows the death of Godzilla. From the very beginning, they've established that this version of Godzilla, or that Godzilla is dying in this movie, and that if they don't do anything in time, he's going to destroy the whole world. And that's honestly a very good way of ending the Heisei era. And also, they created a new monster, which was Destroyer, created out of the Oxygen Destroyer, which, in my opinion, because the movie is set in the same continuity as 1954's Godzilla, it's a pretty nice way of tying the beginning of Godzilla to the end of Godzilla right there. The effects are pretty good. The story is pretty good. Honestly, Godzilla vs. Destroyer was a good ending to the Heisei era. Honestly. So I'm going to put it in an A tier. Next, we have Godzilla vs. Gigan, and I'm unfortunately putting this one in the D tier, right here. Godzilla vs. Gigan, even though I did see this movie growing up back in 2010, doesn't really speak to me, honestly. Gigan's pretty cool, though. I do like Gigan, and I also do like Anguirus in this movie, but honestly, aside from that, the movie is just meh, just kind of, yeah, it's just there. The movie's not that compelling. The movie's really not that, I just didn't like it that much, honestly. It was just pretty much, it was just there. Then we have Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, right here. Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, in my opinion, is one of my least favorite Godzilla movies. Really did not like the fights in the movie, really did not like Ghidorah himself. The concept of Ghidorah works, though. Him representing pollution and toxic waste could have honestly worked extremely well had this movie been a character study of Ghidorah. With no Godzilla, had it just been about Ghidorah, it could have really worked. It could have been the 1954 Gojira of the 70s, but because they had to cram Godzilla in there, and because Godzilla is the goofier, cheesier monster, and this movie was sort of aiming at children at the time, it has a very conflicting tone. Because of that, that really was distracting in my opinion. And the fights were really horrible too in this movie as well. I didn't really like Godzilla vs. Ghidorah that much. Next up is Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, and I don't know why it's doing this. Okay, there we go. So here's Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, 1991, and I'm also putting it in F tier. This movie has aged horribly. The effects are not that good. The time-traveling plot is very confusing. And, the movie honestly was just not that compelling. I'll give it credit for exploring Godzilla's origins, going back in time to see Godzilla who he was as a dinosaur before he was mutated by the H-bomb. That was a pretty cool idea, honestly. And King Ghidorah himself was pretty good in this movie as well. But his origins of him being mutated Dorats, that was really dumb. That was weird, too. Mecha King Ghidorah was pretty good, though, but everything else about the movie has aged horribly. The effects are not that good. The time-traveling plot was laughably way too complicated, and the amount of Terminator references that are in this movie is just, it's so obvious. It's so unbearably obvious that this movie was trying to be Terminator and Back to the Future as well, because those movies came out in the same time as this one. Next, we have Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, and I'm going to put this one in B tier. I really like Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. The original Mechagodzilla still is the best movie. This one is a good example of how cheesy and how over-the-top Godzilla can be, but when it's done correctly. And this one absolutely worked. Mechagodzilla is introduced as the fake Godzilla. He absolutely wrecks Anguirus. He wrecks Godzilla early on. He even wrecks King Caesar. And it took the combined mights of Godzilla and King Caesar to take him out. And this version of Mechagodzilla was very formidable. I really like that this Mechagodzilla is just loaded with weapons. Has everything. And it was built by aliens, too. Something that I don't think they've ever brought back again. I mean, the anime trilogy kind of did that, but it was also made by humans as well. It wasn't just aliens that built it as well. This version of Mechagodzilla was built just by aliens. and that's what makes it stand out among the other Mechagodzillas. So for that, it was pretty good. Alright, next is Delivers Mechagodzilla 2, and I'm putting this one in the C tier. It was a fine movie, you know, Mechagodzilla was pretty good, but does not hold a candle to the original Mechagodzilla, honestly. This one, I like that they tried to explore Godzilla more in the Heisei era as a father figure, because this was when we saw the birth of Godzilla Jr., and this is where Godzilla started to slowly shift from anti-hero to hero. But the way they do it was not that compelling. It just feels out of nowhere how they did that. Rodan in the movie was pretty good, though. I did like Rodan. I'd like Fire Rodan. He's probably my favorite Rodan, aside from the MonsterVerse Rodan that was in this movie or here. So Godzilla's Mechagodzilla 2 doesn't do a lot of things that are bad, but for me, it's not one of my favorite ones. It's just kind of in the middle for me. Here we have Godzilla's Mechagodzilla right here, and I'm putting this one in the D tier, right here. Godzilla's Mechagodzilla for me is... I grew up watching this movie. I do have some nostalgia for it, and it also has the Godzilla design that I saw in Godzilla 2000. But the fact that this movie shares no continuity with Godzilla 2000, it's just odd to me, because it should have been a sequel, but it wasn't a sequel. Megagearus was pretty cool as a new kaiju, honestly. I really like Megagearus. And the Dimension Tide was a very interesting original concept of stopping Godzilla with black holes. Pretty awesome as well, but the rest of the movie was mediocre. Like, the rest of the movie was not interesting. And human characters in the movie were wasted, you know. I didn't like Godzilla's Mechagear. It doesn't do a lot of things that are memorable or really that interesting, since it repeats the same plot points from the Heisei era of mankind trying to develop a new weapon to stop Godzilla, and then a new monster shows up and treat it like, you know what I mean? Like, it's the same plot from the Heisei era. Speaking of which, here's another movie from the Heisei era, and only if... I don't know why I keep saying this, man. Just... Okay, there we go. Alright, I got it. Here's Godzilla Space Godzilla. I'm putting this in D tier. It's one of my least favorite Godzilla movies from the Heisei era. In my opinion, it's just very dull. It was just very boring, very shallow. Space Godzilla is not an interesting kaiju in my opinion. Godzilla Jr. doesn't look like Godzilla Jr. that we see in this film. I'm sorry, in Godzilla's Mechagodzilla 2 and in Godzilla vs. Destroy. He just looks like an updated Manila, which, hey, to be fair, Godzilla Jr. in this looks better than Manila. I will say that. And Mogira was somewhat neat of a mecha, but the fact that they went from Mechagodzilla... I'm sorry, the fact that they went from Mecha King Ghidorah to Mechagodzilla and to Mogira, it's a downgrade. Why would they downgrade the mecha? Shouldn't they upgrade it? You know what I mean? The movie overall, in my opinion, was filler. You know, you can kind of skip that one. You don't really need Godzilla Space Godzilla, except for the journey of Godzilla Jr. that he goes through. Next is Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, I believe this one is. Okay, here it is. I'm putting this one in F tier. Really don't like this one either. Very forgettable. Godzilla fights an enemy that's just a giant lobster. You know, I don't know how that's interesting. The effects in this movie have not held up at all. It uses a lot of stock footage. And it was supposed to be a King Kong movie, but was switched with Godzilla. And because of that, Godzilla gets kind of creepy in this movie, and not in a good way. So I'm putting this one in F tier. It's a really bad movie, honestly. Like, this is not. It's on the same level as Godzilla's Revenge, right here. And I'm actually gonna rearrange these because I have listed. I have a list right here of how I'm gonna arrange all of them from best to worst. So watch out for that. Here's Godzilla vs. Biollante, and I'm putting this one in A tier, right here. Godzilla vs. Biollante is one of the best movies of the Godzilla franchise, and the best movie of the Heisei era. It's so unique among all the other entries of Godzilla because it's much more thematically richer, and it explores and goes into directions that you don't really see in the Godzilla franchise that much. And this was before Jurassic Park, because this movie explored how science can go wrong and how creating life is not a good thing, at least in the circumstances of the Godzilla franchise. And I really like the Godzilla roar and the design in this movie. This is where the Heisei Godzilla roar and design was perfectly mixed, because the roar of the 1984 Godzilla is still here, and the design of the later Heisei Godzilla is still here. And Biollante was a pretty cool kaiju as well, that we have not seen ever since. So there's Godzilla vs. Biollante in A tier. Here's Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I'm going to put it in the C tier. I know a lot of you are not surprised that I do not like Godzilla King of the Monsters. I think it's the worst movie of the MonsterVerse. I think it's really poorly made as a movie, but as a Godzilla movie, I'm going to put it in the C tier. I think as a Godzilla movie, it's not that bad. I think it's very entertaining, and it does its job of introducing the Godzilla fans with more monsters, more addition to the MonsterVerse, and giving us the fan service that we wanted. And Michael Dougherty got to make the movie he wanted to make, and for that, I respect him for that. However, the movie itself is really badly made. And compared to Godzilla 2014, it does not hold a candle to that movie. And even that was not a great movie at all. So Godzilla King of Monsters is just a disappointment. I'll give it credit for trying to be more resonant and trying to be more deeper and trying to be a bigger, better sequel, but, it doesn't always work out. So, yeah, putting it in the C tier. Here's Godzilla Final Wars, and I'm going to put Final Wars in the B tier right here. Final Wars was a lot of fun, honestly. And as a 50th anniversary celebration of Godzilla's history and the end of the Godzilla franchise, I couldn't ask for better, honestly. Even though it's flawed, even though it's not a good movie technically, it was a lot of fun, honestly. Seeing Godzilla beating all of his classic enemies across the world like that and battling a race of aliens that are trying to take over the world. I mean, it's the same plot as Godzilla Destroy All Monsters. I mean, the same plot, but just remade better. And in my opinion, Final Wars has aged better than Destroy All Monsters because this movie actually ended the Godzilla franchise at the time. Destroy All Monsters didn't. And the spectacle here and the worldwide destruction is executed a lot better and holds up a lot better as well because of the higher budget in this movie. But that's just my opinion. Here's Godzilla vs. Mothra in 1992, The Battle for Earth. And I'm putting this one in the D tier right here. It's a strange entry for me because it doesn't feel like a Godzilla movie. It feels more like a Mothra origin movie, but with Godzilla in it. And here's what I mean. Godzilla's in the movie, yes, but he's only in the movie for like 7 minutes. And the movie isn't really about Godzilla. It's more about Mothra and Batra. And the movie itself also is just not, it just suffers for it, honestly. It's one of the weaker and more boring and more dull entries in the Heisei era for me, honestly. So I didn't really like this one that much. And here's the thing. When I grew up watching this movie back in the early 2010s, I actually got really mad that Godzilla lost. Because I really thought Godzilla was going to win and kill Mothra and Batra. He killed Batra, but he didn't kill Mothra. And because of that, I actually got really mad that Godzilla lost in this movie. And I've never been a huge Mothra fan to begin with, so that's why. So, yeah, there's Godzilla vs. Mothra in 1992. So here's Godzilla vs. Megalon. And I'm putting this one in F tier. It's the last F tier movie on this entire list. Godzilla vs. Megalon is the kind of movie that you switch your brain off and just have fun with it. It's a so bad it's good entry in the Godzilla franchise. Sure, we got Megalon, we got Jet Jaguar, and we got Gigan. 3 monsters that have gone on to become classics in the Godzilla franchise. But the movie itself is just bad. It's so much stock footage, so much of it does not hold up. But it's fun, honestly. If you watch it as a fun monster movie, as a so bad it's good movie, it's honestly fun. It's worth it. But it's not good at all. And here we have Gojira 1954. And where else is it going to be but in the S tier? Like, come on. There's no doubt that Gojira 1954 holds up so well, even after all of these years. It's the Godzilla movie, in my opinion, that it's the closest to a genuine great movie. And genuine great cinema, because it does so much more than just being a monster movie. It tells the story of how a monster can emerge for the first time and represented the sufferings of the Japanese people and how he represents the destruction that mankind can cause on the world. That's why this movie has resonated so much over the last 65 plus years of Godzilla's existence. Godzilla himself is not just a monster. He's meant to be the end of the world in this movie. And this movie also shows us the destruction and the level of death and the level of casualties that he has caused in the city of Tokyo. And it's eerily reminiscent of the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's why this movie has held up so well. And the other thing is that it also has things to say about the morality of using weapons of mass destruction. So it doesn't just show us what would happen if Godzilla existed, but it also shows us the cost of using weapons to kill him as well. And because of that, it creates this eerie unsettlingness when you watch this movie. And that's why it's aged so well. So there's Gojira 1954, the only movie in the Godzilla franchise that I would put it in the S tier, right there. So there it is. Here's Godzilla Raids Again, which is the immediate follow-up movie, and I'm going to put it in D tier. So we went from a masterpiece to a very noticeable downgrade with Godzilla Raids Again. I did see the movie recently. It's fine for what it is, but it does not hold a candle to the original movie. I think the problem with the movie is that so much of it is spent on characters that we don't really care about, and the production value in this movie does not hold up. Godzilla and Anguirus both fight in very clumsy, very fast-moving ways that you don't feel the power, you don't feel the sense of scale, you don't feel how massive the creatures are. And the movie just kind of ends right after it begins, you know what I mean? It does introduce Anguirus, and it does introduce the monster romp, battles that we see later on in every single Godzilla movie, almost every single Godzilla movie. But overall, I don't think the movie's that bad, though. I think it's fine for what it is. Here we have Godzilla versus the Astro Monster, or I'm sorry, Invasion of Astro Monster. And I'm also putting this in... You know what? I'm putting this in C tier. It was fine for what it was. Seeing Godzilla, Rodan, and Ghidorah fight in space, it was pretty neat. And seeing the aliens take possession of Godzilla and Rodan and King Ghidorah and destroying the countryside of Japan, it was pretty neat to see that. And seeing Godzilla do the dancing, the jump dance right there that you see in this movie that's become a meme now, like that was also pretty neat. But other than that, I think it's a fine movie. You know, it's fine for what it is. It's not that great. It's not awful. I think it's fine. Here we have King Kong vs. Godzilla, and I know many of you, and some of you are going to be surprised that I'm putting it in D tier. It was good for the time. It was good to see Kong and Godzilla fight for the first time in 1962. But honestly, the movie has not aged very well. The Kong suit design is horrible. The Godzilla suit design, even though I like it, it's pretty goofy. The movie just has not aged very well, even though it was good for the time. You know, and hey, thankfully we're getting the rematch Godzilla vs. Kong in just a couple days. So yeah, I mean, this movie is going to be toppled by the new one, Godzilla vs. Kong. So I did grow up watching this movie, though. I have a lot of nostalgia watching King Kong vs. Godzilla. I used to watch this movie over and over again, you know, when I was much younger. So yeah, I do have some nostalgia for the movie. And who won in this movie exactly? Because I don't know who won. Probably Kong, but I don't know. Alright, here's Mothra vs. Godzilla, and I'm putting this one in A tier. It's a very good movie. The fight between Mothra and Godzilla, pretty well done. And also, this was the last deep Showa era film. And what I mean is, like, this is the last Showa era film that had the dark, serious tone. You know, or at least the dark, serious tone compared to the later Showa era films. And while I haven't seen this movie in a long time, it is still pretty good, though. The fight between Mothra and Godzilla is worth it. So yeah, I'll give it that, and it is in the A tier. I might watch it again, honestly, because I haven't seen this movie in a long time, but it's still pretty good. Here we have Son of Godzilla, and I'm putting it in D tier. Son of Godzilla was a very dull, very uninteresting movie. Godzilla and Manila both have terrible designs in this movie, and because of that, it made it hard for me to watch this movie, because of their designs were horrible, honestly. I appreciate that the movie tried to go deeper into Godzilla's character, explore more of a father figure. I do appreciate that. And its smaller scale helps it make it more intimate and feel more personal when you see Godzilla try to defend his son. That was honestly pretty nice to see, that the relationship between Godzilla and Manila right here. But the designs of these two are what killed it for me. And the dullness and just how boring it can get at times, yeah, it made it hard for me to watch it, honestly. And last but not least, we have Terror of Mechagodzilla. And we're going to put it in the C tier. It was a fine movie. It was almost on the same level as the original Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, but it was a little bit less good. The addition of Titanosaurs was pretty neat, though, and you know, the human element in this movie, I would say it was mostly good. The alien level was mostly good, but overall, it was just a fine movie for me. It was still better than some of the other Showa era films, as you can see right there. So yeah, that's just my tier list ranking of all the Godzilla films. And as you can see, here's S tier, the only S tier film. Here's A tier, the movies that I think are great. Here's B tier, the movies I think are really good. C tier, the movies that I think are fine. D tier, the movies that are not that good. And 5 of them are even in the top 10 worst movies. And then here's F tier, the movies that are the lowest point of the Godzilla franchise, for me, right there. So let's rearrange it then. So Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah stays right there. Godzilla vs. Hedorah stays right there. Godzilla vs. Sea Monster, we're going to move it. And there it is, right there. Godzilla 98 stays right there. King Kong vs. Godzilla stays right there. Godzilla raids again, I'm going to move it all the way right here. Godzilla vs. Gigan, I'm going to move it right behind it. Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle is right here. And then right here, Godzilla vs. Megalon is... Godzilla vs. Megaguirus is right here. Almost said Megalon. Battle of Earth, or Mothra vs. Godzilla Battle for Earth, stays right here. Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, I'm going to move it right here. Planet of the Monster stays right there, and Son of Godzilla stays right there. Right here in C tier, Terror of Mechagodzilla stays right there. I'm sorry. Destroy Monsters right here, and then Terror of Mechagodzilla right here. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, I think it stays right there. Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, I think it stays right there. Invasion of Astro Monster stays right there. King of the Monsters, I'm going to move it right ahead of Planet Eater. So there we go. There's C tier. B tier, Godzilla 2014 stays right there. Godzilla 1984 stays right there. Wait, should it? Or you know what? I'm going to move Delivers Mechagodzilla right there. Godzilla 1984 stays right there. Godzilla 2000 moves right ahead. Final Wars, I'm going to move it ahead of these two, and these two stay where they are. Shin Godzilla stays right there. Godzilla's Biollante stays right there. Godzilla GMK stays right there. And then we're going to move Destroya right here, and Mothra's Godzilla stays right there. So there it is. That's my ranking of the Godzilla franchise right there. So this one right here, this one right here, this one right here, and this one right here. These are my top 10 favorite Godzilla movies. This one, and this one are honorable mentions. These right here are the ones that are mediocre, you know, they're kind of in the middle. This one, and this one. These are the ones that are kind of bad, but not in the top 10 worst. This one right here, this one right here, this one right here, that one right there, that one right there, that one right there, that one right there, and last but not least, this piece of crap right here is the top 10 worst Godzilla movies. So this was my tier list ranking of the Godzilla franchise. What do you guys think about it? Do you agree or disagree with my list? What is your ranking of the Godzilla franchise? Where would you rank the top 10 best and the top 10 worst Godzilla movies? Let me know in the comment section down below, and don't forget to yell at me in the comments for how much my opinions don't line up with yours, you know, and don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos like this.